Hi. I started drinking as soon as we went live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to A Chance of TBD, where we do all of our pre-show talks and our post-show talks. So tonight, I am here with the wonderful cast and GM of Seattle Paranormal Investigations, our Monster of the Week game that just ended last week. For those of you who haven't seen it, feel free to jump into the YouTube and go and watch this amazing and wonderful game um, where we have brought in so many different cultural identities and stories of folklore of all of these cast members that they grew up with, and we brought them to life in the city of Seattle. Before we begin, I'm actually going to have them all introduce themselves, and we're going to start with Devin, the
Yeah.
lovely keeper, the lovely GM of this game. So please introduce yourself um, and give us one fun fact about the creation process. And each of you are going to give a fun fact about your creation process as a character as well. Very short, very minute, and we'll get into it in more detail later.
Sure, we can do that. So I guess first, hello, I'm Devin. I use he, him pronouns. I've been the keeper for Monster of the Week for the past few weeks, which has been a ton of fun. Aside from that, I played Ding here on 5% Chance, or if Curtis and I are left to our own devices, apparently we decide to play a single player game with all of Twitch chat on Wednesdays. So, whatever. I'm around here. If you want to follow me, I use the handle of gray_wolf_moon on Twitter. But really, I just repost things from 5% Chance along with all of these wonderful people that I meet here. Um, Fun fact about the creation process for this. I think maybe the most interesting thing was doing the research for some of the creatures and monsters, and just realizing how much they overlapped. So like looking into the Penangalan for from Nikki, I learned about a very similar creature from the Philippines, um, which Anne can correct me. I believe it's the Manananggal.
Man the manananggal, yep.
Yep, Manananggal. Which instead of a head is a torso, because what makes a floating vampire head worse? Give it arms.
Yeah.
The entertaining byproduct of it was doing the vampire 1,000-year-old vampire stream last night with Curtis, doing live research where Twitch chat was like, "Hey, you should start this in like the Shogunate, the Warring States period of Japan." And we were like, "Great, vampires from Japan," and it pulled up a Wikipedia article. And I'm like, half of these links are purple already from me doing research.
I love that. We're going to jump over to DJ.
Hey everyone, DJ here. He, him pronouns. Um, yeah, this was my first actual play, and it's first time with 5%. And I'm not leaving. I'm just going to like hole up in this little box, and you'll never get rid of me. For the creation process around Hector, so I think I said this already, but I based kind of my idea of playing a spell slinger off of the character Snifa from Castlevania on Netflix. I wanted someone who was I wanted to play a character that was hyper competent with magic and not afraid to get into the fray with it. And so, if you saw in the last finale of me, was like, I'm just gonna get in this thing's mouth and just do terrible things with magic. That was like channeling that. Like, I know I can survive anything it wants to do. A good defense is a great offense, and that was like the channeling of the character. Also, in a kind of homage kind of moment, the name Hector Salas, my family's last name actually is Salas, so it was a fun little homage to like my mom and our family in Mexico, which I don't really know because she was adopted, so we're relearning a lot, but I felt like it was just a fun opportunity because I have never had that last name. I had my dad's last name, and then I got married, so it was an opportunity to wear it for a while, which felt really powerful.
That's wonderful. Uh, ah, I love hearing all these things. Next up will be Nick.
Hello there. I'm Nick Hide, and I played Chang'an, our resident Buddhist shaman who is a blight to chickens all around the world. And yeah, this is my first time with 5% chance. Also my first time playing Monster of the Week as a player, actually. I ran a couple of Monster of the Week games before, but never got the chance to play, so this was a nice change of pace to be on the other end of this. And as for character creation process, I knew from the start that I wanted to be the kind of characters I play are usually three flavors. They're either a blatant reference to a character that already exists in fiction, they're literally a meme, or I usually play as the generic every guy, the one who's the baseline character in a world, for people tend to be more bombastic with their character creation, so I like to play as the everyman for contrast purposes. So I thought it's fun. And so Anne is in the first category. She is literally the female lead from this horror movie called Exhuma. Like it's just her. And the reason I picked her was because, like, obviously I have a character concept. I wanted to do because the game is very it leans a lot into like Asian folklore to begin with. So I wanted to play as a character that reflects that, and I knew I wanted to do like Buddhist shamanism. So I was like, which book would do? Because Monster of the Week is very hard magic. It's like spell casting, those kind of stuff. And so I eventually settled on the Initiate, and it sort of fits. I deliberately wanted her powers to be more low key, not something that people can see, no flashing, And I think it worked out quite well.
Agreed.
Oh, it did. um, Next up, we're gonna move over to Ian.
Hi.
I'm starting with like the newbies first. So
Yeah. This is also my first time playing with 5% chance. This is my second time playing an actual play ever. So I had truly a blast with everyone here, and it was such a joy to be here and share the space with you. My name is Ian, pronouns he, they. I am kind of all over the internet. If you just like search my name, you'll find it. I do voice acting, I do singing, music, all of that. So fun fact about a character creation for Morgan. Uh, so I'll say, I think I said it like everyone else before, probably in the beginning, the very first kind of like hello stream. Morgan was kind of like based off of like Scarlet Witch vibes. I wanted something to do with fate and destiny. I wanted themes of that in a character, especially when I knew we were going to deal with creatures and mythologies of like a very specific, like your own kind of culture that you understand, and what it means, at least for me, to be kind of in between cultures as like an immigrant. And that's kind of where the seed sparked. And so I guess I was thinking of, I love all kinds of mythology. So Greek mythology is one of them. So like threads of fate, um, and all of that business. And I figured I chose the spooky because I figured that wouldn't it be interesting of what it means to be destined to be kind of like quote unquote doomed or pulled in a certain way, and how do you choose that? And even in their name, Morgan Yuan, I chose it from Morgan came from like the Morrigan, from Celtic kind of lore and mythology, and Yuan is kind of like a last name that um, talks and means like fate and destiny. Um, So that's like a very fun fact because I think names are very powerful, and the meaning that they hold can be very powerful. And so that's why I chose those things. And I also just wanted to see what they them felt like for me. And so that's another thing that I did with this character. But yeah,
Follow up follow up question. How did they them feel for you? I'm just
it
curious.
it felt nice. It felt natural. It felt
Yeah.
like an extension of myself. It yeah, there's a lot more I could say about that, but I think I'll like tie it up right
Yeah.
now because I'm a long-winded person and I can go forever. So
So last introduction is Anne, who this is your
Hi.
second time on the channel. So
You beat me to the punch. I was trying to follow the formula of everyone else's introduction. Darn it. Yes, my name is Anne. My pronouns are she, her. It is, in fact, my second time on the channel. Thanks, Erica. Um, and I played Detective Carmen Rivera. I think if you could put that meme of like where we started and where we ended, sort of, is just really, really different. And like, I always knew I wanted to tell a story with her of a significant change. I just didn't think we were going to have time to get there. So it was like, I want to do these two concepts and smush them together, like,
Mhm.
into one person. But I knew for logistical purposes, I had to start with one, one playbook and then, work with Devin to tell the story as we progress. So um, yeah, I'm not going to speak so much to character creation, but I am kind of surprised that we got to the actual we got to the actual story I wanted to tell in so many sessions. I was really surprised. So that's my
Yeah.
thing because, like Ian, I can also be very long-winded. So we'll pause it there.
I mean, I feel like that is something that is so because we do such a short form campaign. And a lot of us who are used to playing TTRPGs, we see different platforms that have these 2 year, 3 year, 4 long campaigns where you get that like extended character development. I mean, us ourselves have one of those games. So to try and fit that into a 6 game session was beautiful for all of you. Like
I could.
nothing in
I
my
could.
own opinion, nothing felt like rushed. It never felt like it was a moment that needed to be like, "Hey, I want to get here" kind of situation. It always felt with the moment. And that's kind of where my next question comes of what development through your characters from what you originally wrote and instances of backstory that could lead to progression actually got you there in the end or got you to a point that you didn't even see would happen. Like I want to talk about how like the beginning to the end because we had 2 people who were a part of Seattle uh paranormal investigation team at the beginning who had worked together and then 2 who were new within like the last like week or 2. So like there were relationships that were already built within those characters. But with that being said, like even in story or in moments, how did y'all feel about it? Like what moments stick out to you that brought you to the next stage? I guess is the long-winded question because we're all long-winded here. And anyone can jump in.
I think for me, I appreciated the ability to build like genuine relationships that were different with each person. And so like there was the opportunity that both Carmen and Hector had worked together, and so that relationship was a little deeper. He knew more of like the backstory. So when we were by the waterfront, like it was one of those like he was not the tactful leader of the group, but also knew that the person who typically filled that void needed more. And so it was like, we're gonna do this. Like the relationship between him and Morgan, and that like, oh, this person is so afraid of themselves and their abilities, and while I don't understand what that is, I need to simultaneously nurture their confidence and in some ways like showcase that being powerful isn't bad. And so like some of the really flashy things that Hector continued to do was not the intention initially, but it was an opportunity that I saw as a player to be like, oh, Hector cares enough about Morgan that while their magic is different, magic is not inherently bad. It's how you utilize it. So that was a really fun opportunity. And then with On, it was a very interesting interpersonal thing where like we didn't have to engage a whole lot. Our styles of magic were completely different, and like quite frankly, Hector did not mess with it. But as a fellow practitioner, he could respect the fact of like, you know what, I'll do that. I don't like I have my own things about that. But I can respect you as someone who has dedicated their life to this, and apparently it works for you. So I'm going to like not engage, but also not condemn. And like give that kind of respect, which was a really fun opportunity with each person.
Yeah, I'll pick up from there. You said what moments stood out for me, or for us that like helped us kind of move the character forward or move them in unexpected ways. Well, I um I didn't realize when I started to play Morgan, how kind of shy and small they made themselves and soft they made themselves. In my head, when I first created Morgan, I was thinking like, oh, we're goth. Like we're straight up like goth dark vibes and we're a little edgy and people are just gonna be dealing with our edgy emo-ness. And then immediately out the gate, interacting with the group, it was just such a softness that kind of came through because I think On has such a dominating presence as a character that I immediately went, oh, I see how the instinct in me just went, okay, I'm new and I'm terrified of these things that have happened and I'm here to ask for help. So I know nothing. And instead of going the kind of edgy, like grunge route of like, yeah, whatever, man, like we're gonna be a little dark and I don't care that you don't understand me. I don't care that I don't understand. It just went immediately to leaders. Everyone's a leader but me. And I don't know what I'm doing. And the thing I love about this group is how quick and how talented everyone is to pick up what everyone else is putting down. And that's what I really appreciate about this group, from the keeper to all the other players. It's just like, oh, you see me having these moments, and suddenly there's a moment of caring, or there's a moment of like kind of tough love nurturing, or there's a moment of like, whatever, you deal with it, or like they clock the darkness that like hides behind Morgan, and they're going to be like, we'll get back to that, we'll circle back, but that's not an issue right now, you know. And I love all of those different moments, especially like for Morgan in the space where they were kind of delulu in themselves of like, oh yeah, we're not gonna worry, we're not gonna touch powers anymore. Like that's solved, quote unquote. So terrified that they convince themselves that they're fine. And finally we get to the part where we have to confront, the carnivorous mermaid, and Morgan spazzes. Morgan freaks out, and Morgan is like, if I use my power now, I can make this much worse. And they just resolves themselves to like physical violence in which they're not cut out for. And I was so glad that um, Carmen picked that up as a moment for her character arc to kind of like shoot off because of Morgan's kind of fear in themselves of like, okay, we're gonna stand our ground, but we're not gonna rely on what we used to because that has almost gotten us killed and I've actually killed innocent people. And so when that moment happened of like me just shooting wildly into the water, missing entirely, and about to get decimated by this mermaid, um, Carmen suddenly stepping up and being like, ah, a moment. Perfect, like
Well,
perfect like setup and like serve. And I was just like, mwah, delicious, So
I ask you a question now because I didn't think about it in the moment all, and it didn't occur to me till a week later. But like, uh, Morgan, how does Morgan feel of just the entire time they've known Carmen, zero magic, zero anything, and then the thing that they fear has all of it like randomly manifested, and now ooh, Carmen's doing magical things. Like, how does Morgan feel about that? Like, where did this come from?
I well, to answer that question, I think in the moment, Morgan was just panic. It's just like
Yeah.
true emotion is just truly fear. Fear of themselves, fear in the moment, fear of everything. And what they truly can trust are these connections that they've built with this group. And Morgan has always looked up to, even from the get go, episode one, Carmen was the detective. In Morgan's head, it went, Carmen is the leader of the group. They are the professional, they know everything. Their actual job is detective. So we follow her. Whatever she says is law, kind of, in Morgan's head. And so I think in that moment, it's seeing like a friend step up into something that is like protective and powerful while kind of astounding. I think Morgan's not afraid of magic because Morgan has seen Hector's magic. Morgan has dealt with On's magic. It's not magic that's terrifying. Morgan's terrified of themselves and what their
Okay.
magic can do. And so that's why they kind of like resolve themselves to restrain themselves to use any kind of it in that third kind of episode. Because in the previous two, they've kind of like not really flaunted it, but just like used it as a reflex because that's what they've done their whole lives and seeing the consequences of that, they're like, no, no, we're actively shutting that part of our brain down because it's killed people and like almost myself. We're just gonna rely on human fists and bullets. Uh, so seeing Carmen do that is just like, whoa, that's super cool. She's protecting me. I need to protect her now, but I don't know how. You know. Um,
Yeah. I will say, like, obviously the logical progression of Morgan's thought process of like, oh, Carmen's the leader, she knows what she's doing. I did not plan that to be like such a prominent thing, right? Because I looked at the relationship between, first of all, Hector and Carmen as like very much a sense of equals, right? So in my mind there's an assumption that yes, she has a day job, but she's also the only, at that point, mundane person around all of these magical people. So to her, it kind of like evens out. Like everybody's got something they bring to the table. So like the idea of leadership never occurred to me in character creation. It kind of just happened. And I was like, okay, you know what? I can rock with this. But also like you know, for it took me maybe the first session to really settle into it and really embrace it. But the fact that Ian is such a generous scene partner, it really helped me get comfortable with the idea and allowed me to add that additional dimension to her character to make her more, lived in, like a person, more of a well-rounded individual. So I think that was kind of the biggest surprise in playing Carmen as opposed to building out the sheet and her skills, right? That uh, that part I figured out pretty early on, but it was like learning how am I going to feel in this character, you know? And like by the time the the storyline went to the pier and everything, and then uh Hector's instinct to be like, I got you, I'm covering you. That's when I like by episode 3 it really clicked. That's when I really locked into the character. And so that was like a really cool kind of surprising evolution, and having the tender moment with Morgan, having the I don't know, I just really love playing opposite of DJ as well. Like generous scene partners and stuff. I'm a little bummed out that I couldn't quite figure out how to make it work with Nick, because I know that it would have been really comedic
Oh
um,
yeah.
There's always
if we
season
had
2.
figured something out.
There,
But nothing, not to take away from On as a character, because I am also a fan. So like these are all really wonderful characters, and even On in her like ridiculous moments has helped me kind of shape Carmen as far as like her reactions and stuff. Like the more I played her and the more she spent time around the other characters, the more I understood her. So it was like I feel like character creation is 50% what you learn about your character when you're playing them, which is
agreed.
really fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, that for me the part of character creation that's the most fun is the things that happen on the fly.
Yeah, honestly, that's how I do it most of the time. Like, I have an idea of what I would do. So for Anne, obviously, her character is meant to be, very stylish, a bit arrogant, always expect things to go her way, a bit selfish. But then I don't really know how to play that out necessarily until I'm in session 1 itself. Most of my reference at that point is, funnily enough, because I had 3 different female friends who were in girls' school back in Malaysia, and sometimes we get together and then we were talking, and all 3 of them are in different girls' school, and their stories are and they always describe it in the same way. They say that it is basically Orange is the New Black in high school.
Oh
And
my
for all
god.
3 of them. And so they were telling me
Terrifying.
about they were telling me about some of the girls that they had to deal with. It's actually pretty savage, like some of the stuff that they taught. So I was over there like, claim, and that's how I ended up playing, and for the most part at the start. And then of course as we play and we interact, that is when, An's weirder side started coming out. Like, I mean, who refuses to get medical attention because blood coagulates and it is like nature's natural band-aid? Like, I just blurred that out on the fly and I'm like, why?
On was just such a wild character. I never knew what you were throwing my way, and I loved it.
Yeah, but also beyond that, I think the scene that I stand up to me most for on in terms of, fleshing out her character is when, Morgan reached out to her for help, because that she basically did all of that. It is probably the most selfless thing she did. And that is, I think, is the crux of her character, is that she is selfish most of the time, but then when push comes to shove, or when it gets down to it, she will help you. Like, she is inherently a good person, even if she is a bit more money minded than, like, if she gets a job and asks all of you to join up, she would be taking more cuts than all of you. Like, that's just how it works.
Like she'd lie about the total, be like, "Oh yeah, no, it's even," but like
Yeah. Oh
teach
no,
her to take the number down like 20% and be like,
yeah.
"Yeah, no, it's 30,000, but really they're getting 50."
Or rather, she will be open about it, and then she'll just give you that look. Argue with me. Come.
Wild.
So Devin,
Yeah.
are there any moments that were surprising to you playing the game? Kind of
Yeah.
having that like the omniscient,
Mhm.
knowing the backstories, having talked to them before we started playing, all of
Yeah.
these things. Is there anything that like threw you through a loop where like, oh, I have to rewrite all of this kind of moment?
Um, I mean, pacing wise, I had to do a couple of rewrites to make some things fit, but I honestly, every single character I had planned came to life thanks to just everybody at the table. I think the one that it happened most with was Kira. Kira was
Mhm.
not supposed to be that much of a recurring character, honestly. Like, they were gonna be there, they were gonna throw you in the sewers and be like, peace, and just, like, never show up again. Um, but, like, something about those first couple of interactions with, like, Hector and Morgan and Carmen and on in that tea shop, Kira fully came to life and like ran off in their own direction, and it's like, no, I exist now, you're keeping me in this story. And it was like, well, okay, like, there we go, I guess they're like a main part of this now. So probably the most pivotal moment there was the dream sequence with Morgan, um which, not gonna lie, like, that was another one where like I kind of scripted it out and it's like, yeah, I'll roughly, like, this is roughly how this is gonna go. Ian, you stole that scene for me. Like, we got
Aw.
in there and like you hit the ground running in that scene, and I was like, oh no, this scene means so much more now than my original plan. Like, this scene
Oh,
is now a thing. I loved it. It was awesome. Honestly, that whole episode had so much good, like, role play in it, because that was also where we got Carmen and her conspiracy board with Rocky. It's where we got Hector and the Abuelas. It's where we got On just being a a badass at like banishing things. The beginning of what I'm sure will be many chicken sacrifices. And just like then just the like sleep deprived but don't let anybody know vibes that persisted for the next while.
Uh, yeah, I feel like there's been this group of people has been so for y'all to only meet 2 months ago and form such quick connections with everyone. Where like it was never a moment of like there was never a moment of trepidation. Like y'all trust each other at the table. Um, and this question now, I guess, is more towards the precursor of the creation process of what helped make that feel more natural. As we've all played in games, we've all been a part in one way or another, either GM, but the fluidity that you all had, what is one thing that comes to mind of how made this click so quickly or so easily?
Magic. No, I'm kidding.
Magic.
Jazz
I
hands.
I think there's a mutual respect that is carried out through everyone here. And I feel like we got that vibe very quickly in the way that we asked questions from each other, in the way that we prioritized, like, our safety and like everything else. It I immediately felt so respected, like stepping into the space before, like, even like, you know, the whole first like talk back or whatever. I felt like, okay, this is a group of people that will respect boundaries, lines and veils, that will respect like my time, that want to be open with me, and is willing to say yes and or even no but. Like, I love that. You know, I love feeling that kind of energy from everyone. At least that's how for me I melded into the group in my perspective. it just felt like easy, that I could just relax when I know that people are kind of taking care of me and respecting me in that kind of way, you know.
I think because I looked at everybody at the table, they're like, "Oh yeah, this is my first actual play," and everybody else had they're very new to doing it live in this particular format. As someone who has done it a lot more often, I look, I had like, my perspective was just like, first of all, they have to enjoy this, otherwise, I will have ruined their entire experience of actual play games forever. So, and I always wanted to, make everybody feel comfortable on their first time out, to give them space to try things and take up space. I committed myself specifically to, as a player, try to be more in the background, and support everyone else's characters, and it was things that I tried to do with Morgan, like, oh baby, go fly, tiny bird, fly. Like, that was the vibes, right? But I behind the scenes, when we started doing the world building and history connections, right? We spent so much time just vibing, and I think developing that chemistry, creative chemistry, if there's anything I could attribute to what we created, it was having that time to sit together and learn what each other's energy was in that process. So I think that part of Monster of the Week is actually really cool, and we had some pretty cool dynamics as a result. So, I want to shout out specifically that part of the game that I feel really helped us as a group.
I think for me, there's a few quick things of like I've never played at a full like BIPOC player table before, and so that was something I didn't know that I was missing fully. Um, I've done, and you've heard me talk about the Queer XP a lot. Like I've done a lot more of playing like at fully queer tables, which again is another really amazing gift. And I was surprised how much it mattered, even though I'm the only Latinx person at the table, to still be like, no, no, we're like we get all of this in different ways. I also really appreciated like in that first meeting when it was off camera, but we were still sharing like our own experiences, what that meant. Like being mixed race for me means feeling really insecure about whether I belong at tables like this, especially being Latinx and white, and what does that mean, and not being culturally connected in the right ways. And then like, I mean, you shared it earlier, Ian, but like you have similar feelings with like your immigrant background, which is again not the same, but it was really powerful to see those connections and similarities. This is also the first like explicitly Latinx character I've ever played, and that was again an intentional design and move. So like that whole scene, like we're joking about Hector and the abuelas, but like,
That's no joke. Everybody like, I
oh,
personally love the abuelas. I'm like, shout out to the abuelas for real. Like, you really brought something to your character that was like, this is distinctly who I am. And I'm like, I respect it. Those abuelas are dope. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to root for Hector. And I when I first learned about like who would be at the table, and like, I'm like, hey, Southeast Asian. I like, and then I looked at you, it's like, oh man, I hope Hector, like, I hope DJ, sorry, names are
it's
flying.
fine.
I hope
It's both.
DJ doesn't like, I hope DJ, wouldn't feel like different or like not fitting in at the table too. It was something I thought about because I was like, there's something like, I didn't want you to feel set like set apart or different just because,
I
like,
mean,
I don't know, it was something I thought about. for sure.
I did, but not in a bad way. Like, I think part of that was also, and I've said this before, in like with Devin's care around making sure that like I'm doing some identities that I assume with you, but like as a white man, of like coming in, telling the story of cultures that are not yours, the level of care and like trust building needed so quickly. Of like, I want to make sure this is right. I want to make sure that this is like kind and telling these stories with the respect they deserve, even though they're scary stories sometimes. Like they still matter. And so yeah, like I clocked really quickly. Oh, I'm the only in this case, but it didn't feel like it's oh I'm the like I have to tone that down. Like at many tables, I'm the only person of color. Like I have to like code switch. I have to have these moments of do I worry about table cohesion or like my experience there? And sometimes those are at odds. I didn't have to do that in the same way. I was like, no, like we all know what it's like to be the only at a table. And so I especially after our first like session together was like, oh, we're all going to take care of each other. So even though we like I am the only Latinx person, I'm not the only at this table. We're still there, and being aware of what that looks like and feels like, and not going to let it like become the narrative, which was really important.
We love you.
Oh, there's so much love at this table. Uh, don't tell the others, but y'all are my favorite. Uh,
I love that you said that in
Envious.
front of the entire internet.
Mm.
they all know
Ah,
it's fine.
it's fine. Yeah.
Um, Nick, did you have an experience or
Hmm. I
it's okay
mean,
if you don't.
yeah. Because so I don't know if I ever mentioned this before, but I got into TTRPG when I was in the UK when I was studying there.
Mhm.
And then after I finished there, I was like, haha, I have all this knowledge. Let's bring it back to Malaysia and spread it to the people here, get in touch with, only to discover that 90% of most like Malaysian TTRPG community are full of gatekeeping assholes and elitists.
Ugh.
And so I eventually just don't engage for like 5 to 6 years and just play exclusively with like, on streams like this with like American people. But thankfully, when I started, I think the first virtual table that I was at, it was specifically meant to be a people of color table. So I don't really have more experience. Funnily enough, I get the ostracization playing at Malaysian table than I do playing with American and Irish people. I don't really know why. And I don't really want to question it. But thankfully, like it's better now. Most of the bad seeds has been rooted out in the last 5 years or so. So it's a lot better. The state of the TTRPG scene here in Malaysia is a lot better now, I'll say. But there are still, certain people that are just weird about things. But yes, somehow I get the ostracization treatment from my own people than I do with white people. It's weird. I don't know why.
Yeah. I will say I think kind of piggyback off of what everybody has said, I think that session 0 helped a lot. I know for me doing the one-on-ones before we started also helped a lot, just so I had like a good sense of each of you individually before trying to interact with a group, because I'm not always super great with especially groups of entirely new people. So that was nice. And honestly, the one-on-ones, because like DJ said, I'm a white man. I know what I am. Uh, I know these are not my stories. Meeting you all made me feel much more comfortable knowing that like you guys will help me tell these stories in a way that is correct, in a way they should be presented, and that I can kind of try to bring to, like, all I had to bring was my knowledge of Seattle, which is not hard. Most people look at me and can tell I've got Seattle in my blood. Like, it's there. And like, I knew that you all would help pick up the pieces that I didn't know or that I wasn't, as familiar with, and help that, like, breathe life into the parts of this that, aren't mine to tell necessarily, but I still want those stories to be out there, because also, like, I've seen lots and lots of TTRPGs about vampires, about werewolves, about ghosts, about ghouls, and I'm not gonna say they're all boring, but, like, after a while you get it, you get it. So it was nice to see something new.
Absolutely.
I think that's the one thing about this game is, in a way, it's entirely new. Um, not It's new in a way because it will always be new, because you brought your personalities and stories and your cultures into this, and there is no way for it to be changed. Um, with that being said, flipping this around, is there a moment in this game? Because this is also my favorite question. Because we've been talking deep for a moment, so now we're gonna make it a little fun.
Okay, if you say so.
If I say so. Is there something that happened in this season that you would have changed? Is there a choice you made?
Hmm.
Yes. One
Oh.
stuck out. One stuck out to me very quickly. It's actually the very last episode. There was a
Oh no.
choice. It's not the fateful choice that Kira asked Morgan at the very end. It's actually in the middle of combat, while we were fighting that kind of great spirit of Seattle, where uh, Devin, you so kindly reminded me that it was like the finale, and you were like, you haven't used your like big whammy. And I was just like, oh, you're right. I've just been so conscious of like where I think things would go, and I knew a lot. There were a lot of other characters that all I know could pack a punch. And part of me was like kind of almost saving that big whammy for like I wasn't sure if there was going to be an extra thing that was going to come out of nowhere, and I was just going to keep it like an ace in the hole kind of thing maybe. Um, so while that happened, it kind of triggered the darkness that Morgan had again, that kind of like spider-esque kind of demon spirit thing that appeared out of nowhere. And um that that moment where it appeared, I remembered having that choice again of like, do I tap into this kind of the power that this kind of creature, dark creature gives me, or do I kind of retreat a little bit and like stumble or call for help or shun it? And instinctually, I was in character and I just made the instinctual choice of like, oh, I think Morgan still hasn't gotten it over that fear and gotten enough confidence in themselves to kind of stand up to that part of themselves. And I think Morgan will still, even in this moment of great power and just like summoning a weird, like Doctor Strange, Wanda Maximoff, like spell of thousand knives in a mirror, you know, um, will still shrink in the sight of like their this primordial thing. Um, and part of me, I think, looking back on it and thinking back on it, I guess like the regret was almost not choosing that spider, not choosing that kind of demon and devil on the shoulder, because they were kind of in a situation where I kind of described very vividly, like their eyes are rolled back and they're like vicious and wild in this moment. And so part of me almost wished to see what happened if Morgan chose the darker side and was like, oh, we've unleashed the floodgates and you wanted to see what was behind the door. Now it's here. Before I shut it again, I want it to have some fun. And I kind of wish that I could go back and be like, no, we're going to choose the devil on the shoulder now, and we're going to see what the consequences are. But, you live, you learn. There's always the future. And that's the thing about Morgan, too, with fate and everything.
Mm-hmm. I think off the cuff, the biggest thing I would change would just be asking for more episodes from the beginning. If I had to do this again, I would make it 8 episodes. Absolutely.
That's why we have season 2.
Yeah. Look, I could do 8 episodes and still do season 2.
I know, I'm sorry. I
No, you're good.
apologize.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much more that you can explore.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get to talk about the Fremont troll. There was so much other stuff we could have gotten into.
There
Yeah,
was a
no,
troll?
you
Season
can
2.
Google Fremont troll. It
Okay.
exists. Yeah, there's a whole other section of Seattle that we didn't get into.
What is that?
like,
Like that
And the
that-
Googling
Oh.
commences. Fantastic.
like that episode moment where we all simultaneously went to Google. What
yeah.
was it that we Googled? I don't
oh,
He's a
Phoenix
superhero
Jones.
guy.
yes.
Phoenix.
There was something
What
else that
superhero?
y'all took to Google for. But yeah, Phoenix Jones was the big one. It might have been something in Pike
Jones.
Place.
No, it was Pike Place was me specific, but the Phoenix Jones, everybody
Yeah.
going to Google at the same time moment is
Yeah.
my favorite brain sync of this table of us just. I'm sorry, I just had
In
to
case
bring
you
it
need to
up.
know about the troll, our lovely tech producer just put a link in the chat.
I think wait, did this troll thing appear in like Life is Strange or something? It looks familiar.
Entirely possible.
That's
I've
wild.
seen it in shows before. I've seen
Yeah.
it before.
Does it get paid to appear
It
on
got
media?
moved? They moved
Oh
it?
my.
Oh.
We
Just
all
so
Googled
Makes me
at the same
sad. It
time.
was perfect just chilling under the bridge there. But in my heart, it's
that's
still in
rough.
Fremont. So it'll be there if we do a season 2.
Yeah.
I know exactly what troll you're talking about, and yes, I feel like it's in a park now.
Ah, that's dumb.
It's
just out.
vibing. It's just vibing. That's the best. I love that.
All right. Any other either regrets or things that you would change about choices made?
I think maybe for me, not necessarily like a single moment, but I felt that simply due to the way I played my character, he didn't really get much chance to interact with Carmen or Hector on a more personal level most of the time,
Yeah.
because she's I deliberately play her as that person that sees herself as above everyone and so just does things on her own, and I committed to that bit and it works for that character, but it sort of stopped certain interactions from happening as much.
But I will say, I did love the weird little interactions of Hector clocking that you are sleep deprived, and it's not acknowledging it, but passing you more coffee. And those little things of if I look directly at this, it's gonna fly away. It's gonna float away. The moment will be ruined. So the best way for me to do this is to pretend you don't exist. Here's more coffee.
Yeah, I think I still do manage to do certain quote unquote non-interaction. Most of the time, Anne doesn't interact with Carmen or Hector that much, but I deliberately just mentioned what she thinks of them at that moment that she keeps to herself, just to keep things, and it sort of offsets it a bit. But yeah, I think I would be a bit more talkative, I guess, with other people. It would
But I
be
think-
funny to. Oh, yeah.
No, I was just gonna say I think that's the beauty of kind of like actual playing this medium. You get to be both like a scene partner and have dialogue, but also get to say our own internal monologue, and we also get to kind of set the scene and put the furniture to say in the scene
Hmm.
of whatever it is. So like even when DJ said like, yeah, I noticed I as you as the player said like you were tired, and the character noticed that you were tired. Um, of course we're gonna suddenly have like we're gonna make coffee, and it's just those small moments that like I think at least for me, School of Abria Iyengar, everything's like a movie and a film in my head.
Hmm.
And so I see that like the scene play out in this kind of like small room. And yeah, I see Hector taking the coffee, giving it to An, and An being like, but like kind of acknowledging, but not, but also in their own way do, and like sipping it. So I think you did more than you thought you did, because it's those small
I'd
moments
agree.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, those small moments really make how you all interact with each other. It may not be like me crying to you or like in a panic, you know, but like it's still just as important, and I think
Mhm.
people get that.
Yeah.
And I think that was actually like what was really great about On is that On was that small moment kind of personality. Like she interjected when she needed to, and it was perfect. It was at the exact right amount of time. Like On is 100% a part of this group, was never an outlier. And she had those characteristics that you might see her like if you were walking down the street and like you see On like 50 paces behind. But no, it's just because she's looking out. Uh, and like you mentioned the character interactions with you and Carmen, with On and Carmen earlier. In my opinion, as a viewer and the producer, was absolutely perfect. Like you were two very strong female presences, but also very opposite. And how you, Nikki, and you, Anne, played off of each other were brilliant. And I just I felt the need to say that.
Thank you.
And
So it
uh
would be funny to play out the very high school butthead things, the one where it's like, so your leadership role is not as strong as you would expect.
here's
God,
a
High
question.
school
real
trauma
talk,
coming back.
It's
real
just
real talk,
Glee. It's just Glee, the musical episode.
real talk, real talk. I would hate it.
Sorry, I really felt the moment to step in there because uh just to everyone's character development through all of this has been phenomenal. Um, especially like Carmen with your backstory, and I mean, as in Carmen's backstory. Um, with coming from a family who has been investigating and finding those moments, to then in the most fantastical moment of storytelling to then produce magic.
I always
How
wanted to tell the story of like someone who didn't fit in with her family, because that has kind of been a personal experience I
right?
wanted to bring with her, where she's like believed her entire life that she was not magical. It was one of those like outlier, once a generation type of
Mhm.
weirdness, or so she thought.
So the question I have, and this is actually both for you and Devin, was that a beginning choice or was that a choice in the moment?
Oh, it was a
as
beginning
you can.
choice for me.
Okay.
It was
It's like
part
had it.
it was part of her story, and for me I definitely wanted to get her to that point where her magic would show up. I just didn't think we'd get to that point by the end of the, like if we I it was something that I thought, oh, if we get a season 2 I might get there, you know what I mean? But it
Mhm.
was always her trajectory to
So
find
this is the
the inner strength inside of her, unlock the magic.
Yeah,
so this
it
is the
was.
fun question where we get to like poke the GM.
Mm.
Did you want to make that happen?
Oh yeah, no. If
Did-
Anne hadn't done that right then and shot with her shotgun instead, that was gonna be a real fiery shotgun. Like that moment already in my head, I was like, no, this is because Anne and I had talked about that kind of story arc being something that she wanted to see from Carmen, and
Mhm.
she had told me that hey, if there's a moment where you feel is right, like a little bit of GM agency, which was good to know I had, but no, it was already in my head that if you pulled the trigger on the shotgun, it was going to be a burst of magic. Like that was already just a foregone conclusion.
Yeah,
The
I
shot
think
the
seeing
shotgun for
Morgan.
arcane focus.
Arcane focus.
Oh, I like that. No, seeing. I think if she had like, if Morgan hadn't gotten into some sort of trouble, she wouldn't have freaked out, and then
Hmm.
that moment would have been different.
Yeah, but
Because
no,
who doesn't
the
love the trope of like someone freaking out and like unintentionally unleashing their power, right? It's the best trope
Right.
ever.
Mhm.
It
yeah
works. And I
yeah
mean, like, I think it works because all of her characters are like our playbooks are tropes. Like what we are
hmm
playing
Mhm.
are tropes of
yeah
characters.
Yeah.
So I love that for you, and I love that we got to like set that all up. You know.
I also
Yeah.
feel like all of you as characters took those tropes, but then made them your own. It wasn't a very like cookie cutter, which is also what I love about TTRPGs, especially a game like this, where there's ways for you to ebb and flow through everything. Um, and being able to tell a story that is your own. Um, that being said, with your trope, is there something, or with your character, either game sheet wise or otherwise, that you wish you could have done? I don't. We already talked about doing something different, but that like you felt pigeonholed in a way, or was that never a moment for any of you?
I think for me, I did have some trouble with it because I had a very specific idea that I want to do, right? Buddhist shaman. And even though the initiate is the closest to it, it still doesn't really quite fit because it's still very, exaggerated, right? Because, it's trope, so it's meant to be more exaggerated in terms like
Mhm.
the whole point of the initiate is that you have an entire sect. My sect is just a grandma and her two daughters. So and then
Oh
just
no,
Eugene that was adopted in.
yeah
Yeah, so it can make it a bit harder. And also, I just remembered, Devin. I was just
that
looking
makes that
through the.
last scene so much worse now.
Yeah,
yeah.
I was
You
just.
brought
Terrifying.
down a
Terrifying.
few consequences on your sect.
Yeah,
I told you I was gonna pay him back
we're
eventually.
we're we're yep, we're
Nope, they'll
gonna.
yeah,
come up.
yeah. But yeah, I
Devin's
realized that we have not been
got some.
using. We had not been using the initiate's main thing, the start of session thing. But
Yeah.
in a way, it makes sense because she's not supposed to get much help from the sect anyway. She's doing her own thing. But yeah,
hmm
I just recalled that that was a thing while looking through, while I was just browsing. Wait a minute.
Yeah, I tried to find a couple of spots to make it work, and it, like you said, just with the way the character developed, it didn't make a ton of sense. You did call one time
Yeah,
for
but that one was for a different
yeah.
initiate move, not the
Mhm.
not that.
Oh yeah, you're right.
but
That still wasn't the beginning of mystery.
yes,
Yeah, you're correct.
but
I
yeah.
will
So
say,
yeah, I did struggle with trying to make it work, but I think it still worked out. So
I think the mechanics of the game, some of it can feel maybe quote unquote like confining or boxy. Specifically for Morgan, like using the spooky, there are certain things like one or two of the moves that the spooky has. One of them is telepathy, you know, and it tells you that they can like read a situation or communicate people to people in their heads and manipulate someone or whatever. And that in itself, it's like, okay, cool. Now I have to like, if I do take the spooky, like I have to set my, even though I didn't want telepathy as a power, it's a kind of like shoehorned in there. And maybe just because of the way I play, just role-playing games in general, or just like learn from uh, D&D from different people, I I try not to think of the class as the character, and I try to like separate the two. And uh, I was taught in my own way of like, you know, you can make your own kind of narrative flavor around these kind of shoehorned boxes. So even though it's like maybe I didn't take telepathy for Morgan, but if Morgan, got that box of like they can read somebody's mind, perhaps maybe I could narratively color it in a different way, that is not like Jean Grey from X-Men or like
Mhm.
Professor X or everybody else that has telepathy.
Mhm.
Maybe it is just I think the way we tell stories can kind of change what the mechanics that is shoehorned into us like can be. So perhaps instead of like, yes, I have telepathy now, maybe it's more of just like a knowing. And like instead of like I read your mind, it is like kind of a magic of just knowing something innately in you with by just like reading something. Or like maybe instead of telepathy, I have like a weird spirit friend that like goes to you, reads your mind, tells me what is happening. I think like maybe that's where my like storytelling brain loves to play and mess around with the box, because like I
Mhm.
don't want to be always necessarily in this box.
Mhm.
And I think that's where the beauty of it can come in. um so I think I also just lost the narrative thread of what I'm talking about,
No,
so I'm going to stop now.
I no, you didn't. I feel like you answered the intention behind my question was the fact that personally I felt that none of you felt boxed in by your characters, that you had that narrative flavor to kind of go beyond those tropes. So I think that was really the question I was asking was like, so how far did you go beyond those tropes? Kind of situation. Ian, you just helped me.
Oh,
You
thanks.
helped
You're
me ask the
welcome.
right question.
You're welcome. Sometimes I just talk and talk and talk, and I don't know what I'm saying anymore. But yeah,
It
you're
was
welcome.
perfect.
Yeah.
I
The
like
intent
I
question was
like I like to think that I struck a balance between mechanics and vibes for for um for Carmen. I found that her specialty moves were really helpful in like wrapping my head around what she was supposed to do mechanically.
Mhm.
And you know the fact that it really leaned into her knowledge, I thought was a helpful tool to get into the character. I didn't necessarily feel boxed in. It just gave me a set of tools to further my character. And the great thing about collaborating with Devin is that we always had that communication, especially because of the direction I wanted to take my character. So we were already trying to figure out how we could make it work to move towards a certain direction. And so I never felt limited, mostly because Devin was like, "Hey, we'll make it work. If it, we'll just
I,
mess
as a
mess
GM,
around with it."
emulate that like Pirates of the Caribbean quote where rules are really more like guidelines most of the time.
Yeah.
Like
So
anytime I read a rule book, I'm like, this is kind of what I should do, but like I want people to have fun. So ultimately I am always willing to like bend and flex those or really dig into that narrative flavor like Ian was talking about with cool, it's technically telepathy, but we're gonna reflavor it, we're gonna rewrite it a little bit to make it work with your character.
having a GM, having someone lead the table who is flexible like that is a very good way to like keep the mechanics from being so limiting when your GM is open to working with you.
Yeah.
And it's also really cool that Devin's like, just message me, we'll talk about it. That also really helps.
I
And I
think
think like, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
Okay, real quick, I just think again, going back to like D&D because that's where my roots of tabletop RPGs come from, is just like I remember being like a very new player and not fully understanding like all of the rules because D&D has a lot of rules. And but I love new players in D&D specifically because sometimes the rules are not boxing them in because they're just too many to consume and to take in. They kind of just go. And then you get to see like where they kind of poke at the holes or the boxes or color outside of them. And the GM gets to be like, yeah, or no, or like, yes, sure, let's run with that. And again, to Devin's part being so open, like I love that so much. And I think that's what helps us like break those kind of like molds. It's just like our imaginations just go. But back to DJ.
So I did feel boxed in, but not because of something other people did, but what I did to myself. This was my first time playing Monster of the Week, a Powered by the Apocalypse systems, all of those. And so like I found my niche and was like, I'm just gonna live here so I can like, because I'm a role player first, mechanics second. And so I'm like, I don't feel like I need to like do more than this, but I can still roleplay the ways I want to. And it wasn't until the fourth episode or fifth one when the sirens and all of the big magic I was doing and that I feel like I finally was like, okay, I get what this character can do if I want it to be really small. Let's see how big I can go and like what will happen there. So like doing the location and all of that, I was like, oh, there are very little rules limiting me. It's only what Devin will or won't allow. So like, let's just shoot this shot. And the worst he'll say is no, and then we'll think of something different. And the best he'll say is like, go for it. And I was like, okay, so I now made an ice pin. And I liked because that was probably what like the largest magic that my character did. And I felt like it was a good balance of being like, great, you're gonna have to like take a minute now. And I was like, yeah, I probably am gonna have to take a minute because I did my thing and I'm gonna like sit here and be like, oh, migraine coming on. I need to like breathe for a minute.
You
But
said Titanic iceberg who?
yeah.
And that
I said I don't want this fish going nowhere.
And
Um
you succeeded.
I did.
Yeah.
So I think I was boxed in, but not because someone else did it, but I was like, this is where I know I can operate. Like the spell slinger, like combat magic is its thing that makes it unique. But I also wonder, like, we were a very magic heavy group. We had
Yeah.
3 of us that initially started in the magical side of things. I wonder what it would have been like if like that wasn't the case, if I was the only magic person. Like I would have had to break that box much faster. Um, I think.
I will say the other game that I've run, none of them are magic. The one is sort of magic because they took monstrous. They're all fairly mundane, except for like a couple little things. It runs very differently. Like it changes the whole scope of what you're doing.
I loved being the only non-magical one for the beginning of it, honestly. I thought it was cool and I really loved playing it up that oh she has no magic. It was like something that was very emphasized so that when the moment came, if I had the opportunity for it, it would be more impactful, you know? The emphasis on the fact that she is very different from her magical counterparts. I was very intentional in highlighting that in the first 2, 3 episodes.
Nick, did you have anything to say?
Hmm. Not really. Nothing that hasn't already been said by other people.
All right. Then we're going to lead into the final question of the evening. Where do you see y'all going in the future? Are you staying with SPI? Are you following someone within your current group? Where does the natural progression of all four of you go?
Hmm. Well, for me, that would depends on what fate my sect has.
Well, we faded back at I feel like that's one thing is like the end of the final episode was fading into
Mhm.
the end of your sect. Or not the end of your sect, but like
Whoa.
the scene.
Whoa!
So I don't think I wrote
What?
that in my
Sorry,
notebook
no,
yet.
no, nope, nope, that's not what happened. I mean, my bad. Who?
They just didn't answer the phone. That's all. They just left the phone unhooked. That's it.
It was just a phone ringing
It
so
was just
Yeah.
much.
yeah. It just
New
rang and no one's home.
Yeah.
season
So I
2,
feel like
new phone, who this?
with with that being the final scene of the phone just continually ringing and ringing and ringing and no one coming to it, I'm gonna start with Nikki with On's reaction.
Yeah. I think she would be a bit suspicious and try to reach out to some of her other friends to go investigate to see what has gone on. Because like even if like let's say that call did not happen, An would have, even though she wants to go back to Malaysia because that's where she's most comfortable, she would still prefer to live here because currently, being paid by Dirk, USD to RM, amazing transfer rate. So she would try to get as much. She'll milk that as much as she can. But also, she also feels responsible for Morgan's fate now because the entity that haunts them appeared to her. So she's like, "Oh, you're all challenging me. I'm gonna play ball now. Let's go." Yeah, that kind of thing. So she would only um, think about going back or rather leaving America once the thing with Morgan is resolved for her. So yeah, for Morgan's character, expect more, I guess, animal blood, I guess.
I was actually
We
expecting
never
more than
tested that. Did we ever test that?
The
It was
The
bobblehead.
centaur? Yeah.
yeah.
Not yet.
I was like, that is not a regular horse.
All right. Next steps. The other three.
I guess I'll speak on my part since um, Nikki talked about how Han and Morgan are connected in that kind of way because of that fateful ritual that took place in Morgan's apartment to kind of like dispel and get rid of these kind of like dark shadows and entities that Morgan is tied to. Um, I'll say maybe like as a player first in my brain, like if like as if that kind of second season follows that thread of like we are following On's like sect now. Part of me almost wants to play somebody in the sect or somebody like over there, just to have a shift of a point of view of like maybe what had happened while the phone was ringing or before the phone was ringing, or maybe in the instance of the ritual that is happened in like the US with Morgan at the same time on the other side, because you saw kind of like the demon or spirit, for lack of a better term, like transported into that, and we as players and the audience know that like technically on failed the role, and so consequences. So it'd be nice to see what consequences were, and maybe in like flashbacks or whatever they missed. But that's just like Ian player perspective. Um, but also for my own player perspective, I've loved Morgan very dearly, and I don't think Morgan's story is finished in any sort of way. Um, I think I made, I kind of, whether kind of intentionally and didn't realize the scope of it, realize how big of a part like the Threads of Fate theme would be. I just thought of it in my own way of like, oh, it's my culture. Like, I am an immigrant. What does this mean when you are taken away from a place that you're rooted from, and what are you actually destined for? Um, and I think, yeah, I think there's a lot more of an arc for Morgan to follow that. Like, obviously, they haven't overcome their literal demons, and metaphorical ones. And I think also if Morgan, I don't think Morgan knows this, but if Morgan ever, found out about like what happened to On and On sect, um, they would be in crushing guilt, like heavy, heavy guilt. And I very much recall that that was a little dark side marker that I switched to um, while we were playing this season, because I switched some of the dark side things to like dark bargain and guilt and like soullessness. So I was just like, more things I can tap into. So I think I see a little bit more of a trajectory if we do like shift in that way, and I continue with Morgan. And I want to see a little baby Morgan grow into someone new, because I think there's so many possibilities. It's giving almost like everything everywhere all at once. Like I can see different threads of like who they could be, depending on the choices that are made. Um, but that's my thought.
I'm gonna jump in because I don't. Anne doesn't know this. I want Carmen and Hector to take over SPI. I want Hector to take on the magical side, so working with the elders from 8th gen and like those spaces and places, taking and making sure that the spirit of Seattle is not disturbed and kind of. And I want Carmen to take on the mundane and the like that side of things as well. I think that's a like future thing,
Oh my god.
but I think that is where their story could go, because neither one of them are leaving Seattle, I think, and and Hector like found this interesting connection with wanting to like go and figure out where the spirit was going to be rested, provided protections there as well. Um, so yeah, surprise! Like season 3, right? Is us taking the taking over SPI, and I think it's also like an interesting mechanic with the game is you could eventually retire your character,
Mm-hmm.
and so that could
And
be a
then they
very
become an NPC. Just Carmen's just vibing in the office, giving out missions or whatever. I'd love
Look,
that
that just
actually.
means Dirk doesn't have to wake up to go to work. He'd be all about that.
Like, yeah, Dirk just owns the building.
Yeah.
yeah.
Owns
It's
the
He
building.
so
He
has
just
the
funny.
goes down to
keys.
his basement, and like anytime you need something, you go down there, and Dirk tells you
Mhm.
what like shelf it's on.
Yep. So
My
Oh,
it's so funny that you bring that up, DJ. I keep trying to call you Hector. My brain.
it's
I'm
fine.
tired. It's funny that you mentioned that, DJ, because like my thought was an entirely different thing as far as Carmen's direction. I was like, So she just found out she could do magic, which is a thing she didn't think she could do. She was that once a generation weirdo, but she actually isn't, right? So dealing with like her family after that, like I kind of want to explore the hey, your life just blew up and it's not what you thought it was. Like, I love maybe the idea that maybe once the family text thread starts lighting up, they're like, oh, hey, like you could join the family business. We're going to travel and go hunting, right? And they're like, I don't know. Having kind of that conflict, I guess, that personal like conflict. That's what I was thinking this entire time. Like, oh, she's gonna her family like text thread is gonna blow up.
Well,
So,
and I say like I joke season 3, but like I don't think Carmen and Hector are ready for that yet.
no, I know, but
Yeah,
it's
I think that
it's just interesting that we had different versions for the future. You're like thinking long term. Meanwhile, I'm thinking Carmen's gotta figure her family out now.
well, I think it's fine because like I wrote a really big backstory for Hector and we didn't get into it. Like the fact that his abuela is like the one who raised him and taught him magic, like, all of those things which are so key didn't show up. And part of it is like we didn't get, again, if we had more time, more episodes, I think if we tapped into the
Yeah.
Latinx side of
I,
things.
I will say, like,
Oh.
when we talked about regrets, my one genuine big thing is that I did not get to showcase the things that DJ brought to the table as much as I got to showcase everything else because of timing. But we also have season 2, and I am fully confident you can give me more things to throw at you.
Terrible things. But so like I
Season
think
2,
that
all Hector.
oops, all Hector. So I think that's I almost like freedom of this. Like I know as a player, like, oh, I have this tribunal of like council of like wizards that are gonna like show up and be like, so we know you now.
Right? Yeah, those exist now.
Which could be a really fun arc. I mean, there could be something like, again, while we didn't get to it this season, like there could be a hook of, oh no, something's like wrong with Abuela, and you have to go back to Mexico and like try to, do I bring the team? Do I not? Like, so I think there are different hooks, but because Hector still is pretty like blank slate in a lot of these things, I think that's why I was able to go like more long term. Like when this story is over, the epilogue could be like you and I taking over SPI and letting Dirk retire, and like On and Morgan could have places in that if they wanted. They could not. Like it's open in a really fun way.
I don't even know. I don't know where Morgan's going to go tomorrow. Like it is so crazy for them that it's just like they can't. If you ask like, what do you see yourself in 5 years? They're like, I don't know. Hopefully alive. Like is the best bet. You know,
Oh no.
is what they got. So that's where
I
they're at.
I feel like that is the reason why I love all of your characters so much, is because there is so much more fluidity and stories to be told from this cast of characters. There's so many different ways to go when we get to season 2. Devin has some things up his sleeve.
Oh yeah,
Did Carmen
I got a
did
whole
Carmen
year to plan this one. This first
Oh,
one got
yeah.
in like 2 months. Just imagine, I'll have 6
I may
times
have
the amount of
sprung
time.
this on him.
so
Um,
so do we have anything else to talk about? Because I've got a fun topic to kind of end the conversation in.
we do not. So, Anne, I will let you your fun topic. Um, I will say bathroom time is encroaching slowly slash
No,
quickly.
it was just the question of so does Carmen get to go on that date?
Ow! Yeah, Devin.
God.
Oh,
Does
yeah.
Carmen go on the date?
No,
She
absolutely.
she
Absolutely.
went in. How much do I roll for Riz? No, I'm
Um,
kidding.
yeah, no, roll
No,
roll
that
2d6
will be
as
the
your
first
charisma.
roll of season 2. Is rolling to
You
see
roll
how
for-
that date went.
My
Yep, that's
goodness.
session
Carmen's first roll.
0.5.
Yeah.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
how badly Carmen does on his date. She tries to be so cool.
Oh, Carmen probably did fantastically on that date.
I'm I I'm sorry. I had to ask.
Don't be
The way
sorry.
the session
No, don't be
ended,
sorry.
I was like,
That is
I thought it would be a fun way to end the conversation. Just like,
Oh yeah, no. It is
yeah.
definitely a note in my notebook that Carbon has a date. Like it's James will be back.
actually a note.
Love it.
Oh my god,
There will
that's
be a
amazing.
5th player added, and it will be James.
It's James
Oh my
slash
god.
Eugene. It's just
Yeah.
James Eugene.
Oh.
All right. So I love you all. We are going to end this evening, but for the last time until now, please introduce yourselves. Tell us about where we can find you on the internet, what projects are coming up, all of those things, um, links, hashtags, all of that lovely, lovely stuff. I'm going to start with Anne because I ended
Okay,
with Anne.
hi.
So
Yep. You can find me on Twitter at XO_girl wonder, where I tweet about a lot of things. Coming up, holy crap, coming up on Sunday. Wow, that is happening real quick. Hold on. Let me see if I can get time zones are hard. Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Sorry, 9 a.m. Eastern on the Misadventures League Twitch channel. I will be playing a Animon story game called Digimon Restart. I will be playing a 13-year-old gentle heart, very sweet, very timid. That's going to be so weird. I made a choice. Named Lucy. So that's going to be really great. Really get to flex my acting muscles by pretending to be a shy kid. You can see where I would struggle. So that is 9 a.m. Eastern for those morning people on the Misadventurers League Twitch channel. That is my major announcement. For everything else, check out Twitter at XO_girl wonder. Thank you.
I'm trying to remember the order.
I
Ian?
think it's me. Yeah, I think it's me. Hi. Hi, my name is Ian DePriest, and you can find me on the internet if you just search Ian DE and then the word priest, like a from church. I am on Twitter as Ian LDP, and I'm on Instagram, TikTok, every other social as Ian DePriest. I have music out there. The next big thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna be with the Queer XP podcast. We're gonna record and play Moonlight on Roseville Beach. I've never played that indie game before. I'm so excited to play it, especially it's my first like all queer table. So I'm very excited to experience that. We're gonna kiki and maybe kai kai. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know what's gonna happen there. We'll figure it out. But thank you so much for having me. Uh, I don't know who to pass it back to. So somebody talk.
I pass. I pass. I pass. We're coming to Nikki next.
All right. Yes, you can find me on almost every single social media platform as NixNat1. That is with the number 1, where I mostly just retweet stuff and occasionally comment things. I don't know. I don't do social media much. Beyond that, you can find me over at D8 Dungeon every Thursday. Time zone, I have forgotten what time it is, but it is 7 hours before now. Is usually when we play every other Thursday. We're currently playing through the Dragon of Icespire Peak, where at the end of each session we will roll a dice to determine which person will next become the DM and see what shenanigans we get up to. And beyond that, not that much stuff I have lined up. Most of it is just offlines, TTRPG stuff that I'm working with my group. So, but yes, if I do appear in other APs, I shall announce it somewhere or another on my social media stuff.
DJ, you're the last character to introduce themselves.
I am a
And
character.
yes.
So DJ Kelly Kotroki, big last name, small first name, DJ is fine. You can find me mostly on Twitter at DJ_KQ. If you follow me, be prepared for queer, sass, and DEI work. I'm all three. I get to be one of the leadership team for the Queer XP, which I've talked about and you've heard other people talk about. I've also recruited more than half the people at this table to come join me over there, so that's delightful and fun. You can find the Queer XP anywhere you listen to podcasts. It's a bunch of queer people who play one shots and do panel chats and center having queer tables and queer TTRPG space. I'm excited to announce that you'll see me in a month back here. Actually, we 5% Chance and the Queer XP are doing a collab together, and we're running a full Queer XP table here on doing actual play with Erica as our GM. We're gonna play Threadbare, which I don't know much about other than your broken toys and if you've never seen a queer table play a game together, it's a hoot and a holler, and we're gonna make so many problems for Erica.
Oh, I'm going to pass it to Devin in a second to reintroduce himself, but I will say with this, I picked the most empathetic and wild game for people to play when it comes to Threadbare, because it is all role playing. Yes, there are stats, but also I can't wait to see what we do because it's gonna be in time.
And casting it has been delightful because we're let's throw the role-playing chaos team together. And so you got to see me play Hector, who was pretty wasn't that chaotic, let's be real. I don't think you're ready for a sock puppet that is going to come into this game.
I already plan to maneuver my office so that I'm standing so I can use all the wild gestures that's going to happen.
I'm already debating making a sock puppet to have with me because I have a month to do this.
Oh my
Before we
God.
continue talking about this next game and this next experience that we will all have together, Devin, the brainchild, the maestro that was this Monster of the Week game season 1, please reintroduce yourself because everyone really does need to know exactly who you are.
Yeah, I'm Devin. He him pronouns again. You can find me on Twitter at gray_wolf_moon. Maybe someday I'll have other socials. I'll probably try to use the same name there. We'll see. I'm real bad at social media. Honestly, I just repost things from 5% Chance and everybody else here because they're all worth supporting. But if you do want to see more of me, really the main thing will be come back next Wednesday and watch my crazy old wizard do his best impression of a panzer. And we'll see what happens. Big combats
Do you
are
fight next
fun.
week?
We do. We get to continue fighting, and the wizard gets to continue rolling around inside of a full battalion of Warforged, giving him 26 AC.
Oh.
Oh yeah, no, I wasn't kidding. He's doing his best impression of a panzer.
Okay.
He's just in the middle of a shield bubble, walking around, and then they open up so he can shoot things. It's great. But yes, big combat next week. Maybe the end of combat? Probably not. We'll probably continue for more weeks after that, but it'll be good times. Otherwise, I'll be around here on 5% chance, doing more stuff either on screen as either a jammer or player, or possibly behind the scenes. We'll see. But yeah.
If you have not figured out from now, we are chaotic as all get out. So for tonight, definitely check out next Wednesday, the Ash and Shade Committee. We'll be back for their chaos. That will be a what Devin just said. And then keep an eye on our socials for any other games that we have coming up. But definitely keep an eye out for a little collaboration with the Queer XP. Because I'm a chaos human and I don't like rules. So here we go. I am narrative driven, so this will be a fun game to play. Um, I feel like I need a bigger camera for what's about to happen. But as always, have a good night. Be kind to everyone. Uh, and until next time, always a chance of TBD. We'll see ya.